So last week we talked about how do you actually create financial freedom? Can you do it in 10 years or less? The question is, how do you do it, right? That's what I'm going to cover today. So tune in and stay till the end to show you the actual process we've used to be proven to work for all of our clients and even my own life where I was able to retire twice. Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. This show is for you, those who work so hard for your money, and you're now ready for your money to start working harder for you today. You want that freedom of cash flow right now where you become work optional because you work because you want to, not because you have to, because you have enough passive income to cover all of your needs. But guys, I know it's not just about getting rich, it's about living a rich life because as you're blessed financially, you have a greater capacity to bless the lives of those around you. So, guys, I appreciate you tuning in today because this show is for you guys. And I appreciate so many of you guys have been binging and sharing. And I appreciate the questions and things that come out of this. And by the way, if you haven't done so, I appreciate if you go and subscribe to both our YouTube channels, not just the Money Ripples podcast channel, but the Money Ripples channel as well. Different videos, different education. If you want to really binge and go deep on this stuff, it's great. And if you haven't done so, on the Money Ripples podcast channel, there's even a live section where you've done these master classes. These master classes have actually gone more in depth on some of these concepts we talk about, much longer. We take more time than just these quick little bits that we do with these podcasts. We dive quite a bit deeper into some of these topics. But today, I want to really talk about this how-to process, right? Like how can you actually do it? And maybe this comes to mind because I've had a lot of these, people on trying to friend me on Facebook or other social media. They're all weight trainers or some kind of health trainer that's for men over the age of 40 that make great money, right? And I don't know. I mean, like I run marathons and I do stuff. I work out every day, even on Sundays. I'm working out 7 days a week. But it's interesting how many of these people show up. And it got me to thinking. I was like, well, if I want to hire the a health trainer or a fitness trainer, who do I want to hire? One, I want to make sure I hire somebody who's been there, done that, and still doing it today, right? Like they've proven it. Two, I don't want to hire somebody in their 20s trying to tell me what to do in my 40s, because those of you that are in your 40s know, and I'm 47, but those of you in your 40s know your body does change. Even if you're working out and doing lots of stuff, you have to be a little bit more disciplined than you had to be when you're in your 20s. So it definitely there's a whole nother factor there too. I also understand that every body is different, right? And I don't mean everybody, although that's true too, but every body is different. Everybody has unique situations, unique circumstances that go with that. Different foods have different responses for different people. No matter how much you want to standardize it, you can't standardize it. It's got to be a custom made plan. And that's very true even when it comes to money, isn't it? Because you're not somebody who's just supposed to be carbon copy, out there like, oh, just everybody do this one thing and everybody gets to be financially free. No, it's not the proven product that makes people financially free. If you have anybody trying to tell you that, they're just trying to sell you crap, right? The truth is there's proven processes that help you do it. And so even like with health training and things like that, there's processes and systems and habits that you can do to ensure that you get those results. Results will vary. Results can do better or worse. They can skyrocket, then peak, and do all kinds of things, right? But you know that ultimately you're going to get the results, especially if you have the discipline to do it the right way. And that's why you got to have the right coach doing the right things. So I'm going to share with you guys, I'm going to be very open and honest about what process do we use to help people do it. Because it's not just about, just about the product. It's not just about the investments, right? It's not even just about even using whole life insurance, using infinite banking with your investments. Although that's a great part of the process, that's not everything. It's so much more than just that. So let's kind of dive into what that really means. Now, I'm going to use an example of somebody who actually reached out to us about a half a year ago. He had actually connected to us. We were connected to us through a real estate company that said, talk to Chris. These guys do the best job when it comes to coaching their clients about passive income. Well, he reached back out a little while later. He'd been following the podcast, engineer, early 40s. His wife is a pharmacist, and a great, great guy. And he said, hey, Chris, I'm reaching back out because I want to see if there's something different I can do. Now, this guy, understand he had about 650,000 outside of his current 401k. He had a few hundred thousand in his current 401k with his employer, but he knew that money was locked up. He had another 650,000 outside of it in IRAs and Roth IRAs and whatnot, plus another couple hundred thousand in different types of savings accounts, including even in life insurance that he set up with like a Northwestern Mutual guy at one point, right? And he had some home equity, of course, and we don't really talk much about the home equity at this stage. Although if rates start to lower significantly more, maybe that becomes a better strategy, but not right now, right? And so really, it's just what do I do with this retirement funds and also the cash? And the thing is, here's the thing, guys, is like this guy was working full time, traveling 2 or 3 times a month. His kids, he's got 5 kids between like 3 and 14 years old. He wants to see them more. And he even said, he's like, Chris, I wouldn't mind if I can go part time because I really love my work. But if I could just go part time, so I have more time off my family to enjoy them for a while. He even mentioned, he said, yeah, I don't know if all of a sudden my kids all become teenagers or growing up, they're going to be boring. And so I may want to go back to work. And he might be right. I mean, I've got 5 teenagers right now, one who's in his 20s. And, it's a different type of life, right? You're not doing as many things because now they're moving out of the house. But definitely while they're teenagers, I personally think they're more fun as teenagers sometimes. Sometimes. Depends on their attitude or moods or the day of the month and that kind of thing. We've got a lot of girls. So that can happen all at the same time. And that doesn't always create a few days of fun for us. But like he was just wanting to have that time freedom, right? So it wasn't that he have to retire completely, although it's an option. He might just want to go part-time. And a lot of you guys are kind of like that too. Maybe become work optional. I don't have to quit my job per se, but man, if I can go part-time, or even as he said, maybe I become a part-time consultant so that I'm more of my own business owner. I get to control my hours, my time, and everything else. That could be a great option. And so the question was, how do I get my money work for me now? Because really, this guy is almost 20 years away from being able to use all these retirement accounts, right? But of course, in 20 years, even his youngest kid is going to be in their early 20s. His oldest are going to be in their 30s with their own families and everything else by that point. And so we wanted to buy him his time back. And I explained to him and said, well, this is how you do it, right? Here's the system to actually make this work. First and foremost, I said, number one, right? And this applies to all of you guys, right? Is that we have what we call the Launchpad. So when someone hires us for becoming a VIP, consulting client, right? We generally have anywhere from like 2 to 4 official meetings plus contact in between through text, email, phone, whatever it might be. But we're trying to like lay out the plan with each of these meetings. So the Launchpad is the first step that you have to get to. And many of you guys can actually get this done now, even get it done a little bit early, at least part of it, which is where am I today? Like what kind of things am I doing right now? For example, when we do the cash flow, what's the cash flow currently like? How much money can we start putting away? What's our balance sheet look like? What assets do we have that could be used, right? Some liquid assets. This is why we have the passive income calculator that pretty accurately predicts it. For him, it actually predicted about over 100,000 a year in the first year, right? And I think I even lower that number just to be more conservative. I said, you could do that. It's possible. But even if we go on the low end, honestly, we could probably help you generate over 75, 80,000 a year, pretty easily in this case. It could be over 100,000, but I don't want to make any big promises or whatnot because he was having some cash he's going to have to use for renovations and whatnot. But in case, I mean, he had that potential to do over 100,000 a year or in the first year alone. And so, that Launchpad, that passive income calculator at moneyripples.com can be a great place to start to see what's the potential right now. Now, if it comes in less than 15,000, it might just mean you got to build up some more cash to have more than enough money to invest and do some things. I'll tell you one thing for certain is that we use that income calculator. Why? Because we actually want to pre-screen you. We want to make sure we get as close to 100% success rate as possible. We can never promise 100%. No one in their right mind will even allow us to do that legally, right? But we want to make it as surefire and proven according to our system as possible. That's why we use that system. That's why we use that calculator. And then we even verify it. So if it comes in more than 15,000, you reach out to us and we analyze your numbers for you as well. We say, okay, let's verify these numbers, make sure you put it in right. Because sometimes you put it in incorrectly and you get this overinflated number that's not true. Like, for example, someone puts in their current employer 401k, that doesn't work. Like with this guy, between his current 401ks and his wife's too, and their other IRAs and whatnot, it could be over 900,000. Well, that'll kick out a 10% return. It'll kick out a 90,000 result just for that piece alone. But if over 200,000 that cannot be used because it's stuck with your employer, you can't invest it anywhere else unless you get fired or you quit your job. That number's got to come out. They'll knock it down 20,000 bucks, right? So we got to verify those numbers to ensure we can actually get some of the results. And then we'll actually say, all right, you qualify. Now we can offer you, here's the coaching that will best fit your needs, right? So again, we kind of do this as part of that Launchpad phase is really see where are you? Where's point A? Where is that Launchpad we're launching from to see what kind of results we can really get you? right? And so that's where that starts. Now, when somebody does hire us, they say, okay, cool, yeah, we're going to make more money than what we're paying you. So that makes obvious sense, common sense. By the way, what kind of coaching program actually says, hey, we only want you to pay us if we know you'll make more than what you pay us, right? So many companies will say, well, in 5 years, you'll eventually make all your money back. Why do I want to wait 5 years? Help me do it in a year or so, right? That would be awesome, right? As fast as I can make that money back would be great. And we even cap out our tuition, by the way. So the more money people have, the better ROI they even get on their tuition, anyways, because we just cap it out. We don't charge percentage like financial advisors do. By the way, this guy had hired a financial advisor where already about 10,000 a year was coming out in fees. So financial advisor really did nothing for them. So this guy is actually saving money hiring us versus using a financial advisor, right? So that launch pad, it's like, where are you? What are your numbers? And that's where we start from. Now, as we do that, we even start to look for low hanging fruit too in that first official meeting, right? We start to look at, are there ways to save on taxes, especially if you're a business owner? There might be ways you're already overpaying taxes. So that could become an urgent thing. So we look for the more urgent things to work on right away. It could be things like, do we pay down certain debts? I remember when we met with one particular client, she had all this money in stocks. And she's like, I want to move some of this money over into real estate. Oh, I said, well, before we do that, let's actually pay off some of these debts first. We'll free up about almost $4,000 a month. And in fact, we can even refinance your house and free up $4,000 a month net, even with the mortgage payment changing and everything else. And so that's no money out of pocket. And then you got all this other money you can then use to then invest wherever you want. By the way, we also still saved them on like 30,000 a year in taxes too, which is pretty awesome. Maybe a little bit more than 30,000. I'm going on the low end here. So I mean, even before we did anything, they're already saving about 75,000 a year before we even invested any money. And then, of course, then we started doing things like changing with their rentals. And that's where we start to explore, right? Because we're looking at where's the potential, where are things like in that other person's example here. They had a rental that was non-performing, but had all this equity. We were able to sell that property, move into a new property, and cash flow 2,000 a month versus pretty much zero per month is what they were making before. So we improved their cash flow by 2,000 months. So really, that wasn't just 75,000 this couple was making after the cash flow, but now by moving that property from one place to the other, again, no money really out of pocket. Now there's another 24,000. We were almost $100,000 a year just with simply making their cash flow better. And that's in that first launchpad phase. So phase number one is the launchpad, right? Where's the potential? What are we working with right here? Then two is we start to explore. We explore opportunities, right? This is where, of course, just like with this guy, like he's got so many IRAs and Roth IRAs. He's got cash and infinite banking, or at least in a whole life policy. Not really a good infinite banking, but a whole life policy. And he's got money in savings. Where's the best place to use it, right? So we start to explore those opportunities. For example, some investments are better done with an IRA than they are using cash, because if you're using IRA money, we can actually move money, roll it over to a self-directed IRA, and then invest it. Well, we don't want to move that money into a self-directed IRA and then, of course, just throw it into something where you lose all the tax benefits, like a real estate property, for example, where you can depreciate the property and things like that. We don't want to put that in a self-directed IRA. We would rather do those investments that have no tax advantages, right? Things that might be like a lending fund or lending opportunities, things like that, where you're still making money, right? You're making money, but of course, there's no tax benefit on the interest that you're earning. Well, why not keep it inside the IRA if you want to keep it in there? Now, the debate with this other couple, going back to this other couple now, this 42-year-old, engineer and wife who's a pharmacist, right? Talking about them. Now, with them, again, they want cash flow now. So then the real question becomes, are there ways we can tap into some of those IRAs or Roth IRAs and maybe even liquidate them so that we can actually use it for cash flow before they're 59 and a half, right? So they can actually have an earlier retirement. Because yeah, we could still use a couple 100,000 of their savings. They'll make maybe 20,000 a year, but they need a little bit more to be able to go part-time. So then we start figuring out, okay, are there ways to minimize the tax, tax burden here? Could we actually move this money into something that has a business type of focus, right? Maybe it's into a franchise or something like that, or there is an actual write-off because you're using that for a business expense. You write off the taxes that you're paying on the money you pulled out of the IRA. By the way, IRAs and 401ks, you're still going to pay taxes down the road. Roths are different, but traditional IRAs and 401ks, you still have to pay taxes. So the big only issue we're talking about is the 10% penalty. But even then, even if we have a 10% penalty and even some tax too, right now versus later when it might be worse, Could we still make better money with it? Can we still make cash flow now and catch back up because we can make better money than we would just leaving the stock market, which might lose? So we explore those opportunities. What are the best investments that could fit with those kind of things? The cash money, maybe we use that to buy some of those rentals. We start to diversify and look at different options. Again, we're not investment advisors, but we wanted to see if there's maybe some ways to use that money that would work within what they feel comfortable with as well. And of course, we have a whole network that they could be tapping into. Of course, we got people that I've used, that people I've trusted. By the way, a lot of the people I do use and trust, I do not put on the podcast. So we keep that more for our VIP clients so that they have those opportunities, right? And so we do that kind of thing. And so even during that first meeting, we're exploring opportunities. Sometimes a few opportunities to say, here, go talk to some of these people, go see what their investment's like. And here's the good news: we're not on their payroll. We're on yours as a client. And so if they come back, they say, of course, every company I would send somebody to, he's like, hey, if you talk to this group, they're going to want you to invest with them naturally, right? They want your money because they know it's a good win-win for them because they can make more with your money. So a lot of times people either they'll just say, hey, this makes sense, I like it, or they might come back and say, you know what, guys, I'm talking about guys because there's coaches, in our program, like myself, but Craig Feldmeyer, who I've had on this podcast, coaches most of our people. They'll come back and sometimes they'll even tab, kind of copy me on the email, say, all right, I met with these guys. Here's some follow-up questions I have. What are your honest opinions or thoughts? Again, we don't make investment recommendations, but we can say, yeah, here's some pros and cons. Here's some things that could work, may not work. Yeah, what you're thinking is true. You know what you're thinking about, that fear, actually is already being addressed because of X, Y, Z, right? So those kind of things. So we can explore those kind of opportunities. And that's where it starts to move into phase three, right? Phase three starts happening really after that first meeting. It starts happening like to the second, possibly in those third and fourth meetings. We start to commit. So once you start to feel comfortable with it, then you commit. You start committing money into those deals to begin start seeing that income coming in. And they all pay at different points. Some pay monthly. Most of them will pay at least quarterly. Maybe some might delay it. Some they might say after month 7 we'll start paying you, or after this, first year you start getting payments, or whatever it might be, right? You start to get paid in different timelines. And so then the money starts coming in after you commit and start to put your money in those deals. So remember, one, the Launchpad, just knowing where you are, your numbers, and what are those first steps, those low-hanging fruit to get results fast. 2, we start exploring investment opportunities. 3, you commit to some of those opportunities. And then 4, we move back, not from offense like we've been focusing on, but back to defense. How do we preserve and protect your wealth and your family, right? How do we make sure that you don't get eaten up in taxes, right? How do you make sure you have the right corporate entities and structures? We have accountants and attorneys refer you to help you with that kind of stuff, right? How do you make sure that you have the right insurances in place so that if any one event happens, it doesn't wipe all your wealth away, all that hard work that some of you spent decades saving up for, to all of a sudden watch it wipe away. How do we do that? How do you actually know you're asking the right question and doing the due diligence on these investment opportunities, right? Those questions are things that we do even in the explore phase, but still apply to the preserve phase, right? We want to preserve and protect. And it's fascinating. I had somebody that said, they're like, yeah, I'm just not sure if I really need life insurance. And life insurance is the only thing that we do in-house. Everything else we farm out to people, right? Because we only do what we do best. And I said, it's fascinating that people will insure some hunk of metal with 4 wheels. They'll insure that all day long. This is because they say they legally have to, right? But they won't insure protecting their own family, which should be the number one asset in your life. Shouldn't that be a focus? Even if you don't even need insurance, still the strategy we use make the insurance pretty darn tempting, right? Even if you're like, I'm single, I don't have kids, I might someday, but I don't have them today. But you're like, well, wait, I can do what with my money and protect it and grow it, and it's safer than potentially even the banks? Sign me up, right? That's kind of what people say. So that's why we try to preserve and do those things. Like, how do we protect you as the income producer, the producer of your wealth and your family, and then secondarily your stuff, right? That's part of that fourth stage. And then we move to the fifth stage. The fifth stage is the one that I think is the most exciting, but it's also the most frustrating stage because it's called the income avalanche, right? This is the point where you start to have the money coming in. And as the money's coming in, depending on what it's like, it might be like watching grass grow. The grass is growing, but it's kind of boring just watching it, right? And this is the phase that people really struggle with. This is why we also have what we call lifetime support on the back end, because we want to make sure we keep them progressing even after they're done with those official meetings. And so we kind of keep them on a small retainer just to keep them in the loop. If there's any changes and different investments maybe you don't want to be doing versus ones you could be doing, things like that. All those kind of things we keep people up to speed and updated, right? By the way, I just did a video that went out to them just for them that I didn't do for you guys because of the timing of where I see the stock market actually shifting and turning. I was like, oh, guys, you might need to protect yourself now. That's one thing with this engineer. I told him, I said, listen, because he was like, hey, okay, I'm kind of nervous about paying tuition. Granted, he's paying a financial advisor, but he doesn't see it coming out, right? He's like, I'm nervous about paying this one-time tuition and a small retainer on the back end. And I get it because it takes trust, right? You got to trust that process, the system. And I was like, well, here's the deal. First and foremost, you got more than enough assets to justify and make this money back and then some. That's not the issue at all. I'm like, but here's the biggest thing is that, what happens if you wait a few years, right? What if you don't act today? Because time can either be your best friend or your worst enemy. Time's your best friend when you act quickly, right? Because I said, what if you start making moves today? What if you started, and this, by the way, this is back in last spring. I said, what if you start to make moves, even in your 401k that's locked up, you can't do anything with, but what if you start moving it to more conservative investments, right? What if you start moving that money over to places where you can preserve the principal so that even in the meantime, while it's locked up, at least you can be sure that you won't lose the money, right? Could we start doing things and start moving money over into different types of funds rather than just being all stock market based? What if we preserve that? Because what happens in 3 or 4 years? Maybe you change jobs and then you have more of that cash you can actually use. You say in 4 years, okay, I could probably hire you guys now. Then of course our prices go up because we haven't adjusted for inflation for many, many years on our pricing. And then two, by the way, people actually paid 25 grand just to work with me 14 years ago working with Garrett Gunderson, right? And that was when we didn't even talk about passive income. That was just doing cash flow strategies for business owners. That was it. So yeah, we're even cheaper than that in our company. And so I told him like, hey, in 3 or 4 years, we will be charging more money in the future. So you'll have to pay more to get in. Two, the other issue you're going to have is, of course, is what if the market goes down that period of time? You start to lose money. You're going to say, oh, I have less money to invest now. I have less to do things with. Now I won't make as much money anymore, right? Especially with all that money you had in IRAs and Roth IRAs. I'm like, you got 900,000 there. If the market even just drops 10%, you lose 90 grand. That could wipe out at least another year or so towards your financial goals. That's a disturbing thing. If it drops 20%, then you might just try to hang on the stock market because it drops fast, but the stock market usually goes up slowly to recover. So you're waiting for how many years? 5, 10 years to hopefully get back to where you were again? That's a risky place to be. Like, so that's where time can be your best friend if you act today, but procrastinating can actually be your biggest enemy. Because then if you procrastinate, you've lost all those years you'd be learning and understanding these things and actually implementing these things. What if you bought properties? He was already buying properties as it was. What if you bought properties in this period of time and maybe you didn't cash flow huge, but there's appreciation, which by the way, I do expect that you'll still see appreciation in real estate because supply is still limited, right? Because people aren't selling. So it's still keeping prices higher. But now the rates are coming down. Guess what? It could mean more people start moving and doing things. But if, of course, interest rates come down, that doesn't necessarily bring prices down. That just means more people can afford that price, which could keep the prices stable or even improve them if people start mass exodusing, depending on what happens with the overall environment, whether we're in recessions or not recessions, all those things, right? All those factors could be at play here. There could be so much you could lose in the next 3 to 4 years. Just like I mentioned the client in a few episodes ago, where 6 years ago, no, yes, 6 years, no, 4 years, sorry, 5 years ago, 2019 was 5 years ago. I had to do the math. 5 years ago, he bought properties with the money he had in the market, and he's far exceeded what he could have done in the stock market being in the same places he was already in. Why? Because he was in the right kind of investments. He was able to preserve the cash he had and able to grow it. And it's also paying him cash flow every month. His mutual funds, his stocks and mutual funds and those things weren't paying him cash flow. But now that guy has 3,500 a month of cash flow. Same thing with this couple too. And so this is why the guy said, you know what? It's time. You're right. We need to do this. And he did, and I'm grateful because it's good to see people getting results faster, right? I've watched so many people walk away and their life never really changes. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't have more cash to use later, but there were so many opportunities they lost out on in the meantime because they didn't take action quickly. And so that's the thing, guys, is that income avalanche, right? When you have that time on your side, that income is you start to have it come in. Like even I told him, it's like, even if you just invested 200,000, you didn't invest all your money even. 200,000, it makes 10% at 20,000 a year. Well, that 20,000 adding with the 50,000 a year that they're already saving is 70,000 more that next year to invest. What if that generates another $7,000 a year at 10%, right? Now they go from 20,000 that first year to now 27,000 the second year. Now in the third year, they got the 27,000 plus the 50,000 they were still saving. That's 77,000. Now that adds almost about 8,000. So now they're up to about 35,000 or just shy of 35,000 a year in year three or starting year three. Then we go another year, right? That 35,000 added to the 50,000, 85,000, add another 8,000. Now you're about 43,000. Guys, they're already over $3,500 a month in just 4 years. That's what I told him. I was like, what if you wait 3 or 4 years and the market drops and you lose the ability to earn interest on this money? Now you're starting out, but you're starting out at a deficit where now you're able to start out sooner. And remember, guys, I was just talking about using $200,000. Now, again, results may vary. There are no guarantees. There's always risk, right? All these disclaimers you need to know because it could be better and it could be worse, right? Just depending on what happens. But think about that. That's the miracle of compounding income, right? That income avalanche as you start to reinvest your money. Granted, the fact that they were adding more money made it move so much faster, right? Even just adding money would put them in a better position, anyways. But when you add that money and you're adding compounding income on top of it, not compounding interest, but income too, that would compound interest in those IRAs, right? At the same time, at the other 650,000, if they're earning 10%, that's 65,000 a year and growing it each and every year, compounding it. You can do the math, guys. It ends up getting them well over $1 million quickly, right? And it's not about just the rate of return. It's about preserving the wealth that you have, make sure you're in places that can ensure and give you as big a chance as possible to ensure that your money's going to grow and be there when you need it. That's what's essential. So just remember those 5 key things. Even if you adopt it for yourself, is one, you got the Launchpad. You got to know where point A is. You got to know where you are. Are there cash flow plays you can be making right now to improve your situation? 2, start exploring those investment opportunities. What's available out there? You can either do it on your own, which might take you years and years like I did, or you can borrow somebody else's network like I have, right? 3, you commit. Then you start to actually deploy and use that money to invest. That's the part where people get excited for, because that's where it starts to lead to income coming in. 4, you start to preserve it because you can't just focus on the offense. You got to have a good defense as well. That 1-2 punch, make sure that you can not only keep your money, but grow it as well. And then 5 is that income avalanche. As you start to have that income coming in, reinvest in that income to create more and more income each and every year. And the beautiful thing is this, guys, is that so many people lock their money up in IRAs and 401ks and their life doesn't change. Their month-to-month living does not change. If anything, the money going out of their pocket feels like 100% loss because that money just goes into an account that you see zero cash flow from, as opposed to money going to other places that have backed by real assets like real estate, where it generates income for you right now. So even if anything happens along the way to trip you up on your way to your financial freedom journey, guess what? The good news is, even if you get laid off from a job, you've got income coming in. Even if things happen where you have an unexpected expenses because there's health issues and things like that happen in life, you've got income coming in. Even if you have a situation where you have to have special needs for your children or something like that, income coming in. If you have to worry about college education, you got income coming in. No matter what happens in your life, what curves and moves that might be happening, because life will come at you fast, as they like to say on the commercial. The good thing is that you can have income coming in. You cannot say that with your 401k, can you? No, if anything, income just goes out. You just put your money, you set it and forget it. It's locked away from you until you're finally in your 60s. What if you don't even make it to your 60s? What if you can make a difference in your life now? What if you could be just like our client where he says, I want to go part-time so I have some time with my kids while they're still at home. And then if they move off or they become, little teenagers too busy for me, I can go back to work full-time if I want, but I don't have the pressure of all the financial pressures weighing on me to do that. That is what financial freedom is. And that's why you need a proven process to do it. This is what's worked for me best because remember, I did it twice because I screwed up the first time. I didn't have appropriate defense to preserve my wealth. That was a big thing. I didn't do the right due diligence and things like that. I learned the second time around to get me there by 2016, despite the fact that I had to dig out of a big debt hole. Same thing applies for our clients. Many of them could do it much faster than I did because they're in a better position than I was. where I had to start from zero or less than zero, even negative 1 million, even. And so it's so much more fun to see that. And that's the ripple effect we like to create, right? So remember, you got to launch it. You got to explore those opportunities. You got to start committing those opportunities. You got to preserve and protect your wealth and yourself, especially as the producer, and your family. Protect your number one assets. And then the fifth thing is to income avalanche your money, right? Keep getting that income to build and build year after year to the point where you have the freedom now, today, right? Just like my shirt says, live your life today, not tomorrow. That is possible. So I just challenge you, if you've got cash, you're like, I got money to invest, I just don't know what to do with it. Go to that passive income calculator and see what's possible. It all started with just that one guy. He went and tried out the calculator. He was introduced to it by a friend. But then, of course, it wasn't until really like a year or two later, he reached back out to say, you know what? Let me try that passive income calculator. Holy cow. Is that possible? Is that even likely? And the reality is, yeah, it can be, as long as he enters the numbers correctly. And so if it's something where we can serve you, we'd love to serve you. Either way, I just want to give you hope, knowing that there is a way, there is a path that you can take that actually can ensure better odds of success than anything that a financial advisor typically gives you, right? Where they're literally gambling your money away, taking high risks in hopes that they might get high returns, which is usually not the case. And then you don't know what your life's going to look like. Where here you can start affecting your life today. Money you see today, income you see today, now that's real. Something on a piece of paper that can go up or down with markets, that's not real. Reality is, what's the actual money that's coming into your life right now? That could be your avenue to freedom, your path, your freedom, of course, is in your control. Go and make a wonderful and prosperous week. See you later.